your immune system can be improved by mindfulness and meditation. They've shown this. So you're less likely to get sick. You're more likely to be happier. If you tend to be negative, you might actually change the way you're thinking. I've had the pleasure of working with people through mindfulness that have come to me depressed and thinking very negatively about themselves and everyone else, and then one day say, you know what? I actually feel a little bit better. I can't believe this. I don't feel like myself. You know? And it's amazing that we can do that. So it's through a practice, though. So you're not going to do it one time and then be like, oh yeah, you know, that was great. All that mindfulness stuff, I got it. Pay attention, you know, focus, don't be judgmental. That's cool. I got it. And then what do? We forget. We forget to pay attention. It happens all the time. You know, we go back into a stress response. Another study I like to know is about eczema. So everyone know what eczema is, where you have a kind of like a bumping up on the skin, and it's a dryness. So they can receive light therapy, which helps for that. So, of course, once again, they did meditation while they were receiving the light therapy, and those who did not do the meditation. The ones who did the meditation, their skin cleared up, I think it was 2 or 3 times faster than the folks who only received the light therapy. So, you know, meditation sounds a lot like medication. And it's not the same thing, but the root words are the same. And so it's kind of this idea that you can rely on the wisdom and understanding of your own body to heal itself. That it's already created to do that. You know, most of the time when you go to the doctor and you have a problem, they're just giving you something to deal with the symptoms until your body can heal itself. And that's trusting that through this process that you'll be able to see some of those results. They've actually shown, I'm not sure if you're aware of epigenetics, but it's the ability for us to change our gene expression. And they're saying our environment actually affects the way our genes express themselves. And through meditation, we can change the way certain genes express themselves, so we may be less likely to get a certain disease or any different thing that you might contract as an illness. Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay. Move on. So we're going to talk about the stress response. So anybody here never been stressed? We have one. There's always one. It's never experienced any stress. But we all experience stress. And you can feel it when it's happening. You might not know exactly what you're feeling inside, but you know when you're stressed, and it's usually because we don't want what's happening, or we don't feel like there's enough time. And so what happens when we're stressed is our sympathetic nervous system is activated. Okay? And this is the fight-flight system in our bodies meant to keep us alive, keep us safe. So if you're out in the woods and a mountain lion attacks you, you're going to want this system to go off because you're going to produce a lot of hormones in your body, you're going to have adrenaline going, you're going to be ready to fight or run. You should fight if it's not or you're going to freeze. That's what we do. Sometimes we're just so caught off guard, we're like, and we don't know what to do. And so sometimes you might experience that even in social situations or work situations where you're supervising someone or you're dealing with a difficult patron who doesn't seem to understand the rules. And they come at you in a negative way, or they say something that's demeaning or rejecting of you, and all of a sudden what happens is your sympathetic nervous system goes off, doesn't it? Heart rate starts going up. You don't know exactly what to say, but you can think of all kinds of things that you wish you would have said later. Right? But in that moment, we're stressed and we don't really feel like that we can be present in this moment, and we're often not seeing that person as even being a person. They're just something right now that is getting underneath my skin, and so we lose that sense of humanity in that moment sometimes. And so we allow other people's responses to us to treat them less than friendly. And that's a challenge for everyone. You know, however, if you can cultivate that sense of mindfulness, which is present moment awareness, and you can cultivate an attitude that is friendly to them, even if they're not being friendly, it can change the whole situation. Because you're accepting them where they're at. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them or condone how they're treating you. Doesn't mean you can't stick up for yourself. Doesn't mean any of those things. It just means you're in control of how you respond to other people in that moment. And so this practice of being mindful and having this kind, friendly attention is really the most challenging work that you could possibly do, because it's the work of a lifetime. We're constantly surrounded by people, whether they're family or friends or coworkers, that have a tendency to push our buttons. You know, and then when they do, how do we respond? How do we react? Do we get passive and walk away and then go talk behind their back? You know? Or do we get aggressive and boisterous and, you know, say things that we later regret? You know? We've all been there. So we're all human, so we do things and we react in ways that are less than perfect all the time. But through this practice, if you become intentional about doing this with yourself, with others, with family, then it can highly improve your work relationships as well as your family relationships. So I have up here adapting versus maladapting. So we all have to adapt, right? We have to adapt to our environment in one way or the other. You know, Johnny, you got to go to school. Okay, I don't want to go to school. Or you have to take this medication. You have a disease, and you know, take it, and you're going to be unhealthy. Or Johnny, big boys don't cry. Right? Big boys don't cry. Little girls don't play in the mud. Whatever it is that you as a child felt was like something that was you and that you wanted to do, some adult came over, whether it was a parent or a coach or a teacher or someone who said, you don't like to do that. Huh. What an invalidation of actually what you were liking or what you were wanting in that moment. Other people telling you how you're supposed to be. And so then when enough people tell you how you're supposed to be, you start putting the parts of yourself that you thought were you in a little bag and stuffing them away because people don't accept that. You know, and then so, you know, you get through kindergarten, and then, you know, it's kind of like this idea that you put these parts of yourself in a little black bag, and as you get older, the bag gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and by the time you're in high school, it might be 1 mile long. By the time you're in college, it might be 4 miles long. Because being authentic and being real sometimes, there's a cost, because other people may not accept the way you are at that moment. So we adapt. Because we want to be loved and accepted by other people. You know, it's just a natural human need. So, and then there's maladapting. You know, you might adapt in ways that get yourself in trouble or break the law or whatever, get suspended, or, you know, my boss told me to do this, I'm not going to do that. You know? And so you may adapt in a way that's not healthy for you or causes consequences. So there is positive adapting too. You know, sometimes you need to adapt in a situation so that you can be friendly and kind to others. So I have this idea up here, the cow path. And I'm not an artist, or I would draw it up here. It's basically, you know, a little path a cow takes over and over and over. He goes around the rock and around the tree in order to get to the pond every single time. And then one day they cut down the tree and they cut down the rock, and which way does the cow go? The same way, right? There might be a shorter way, but the cow's like, you know, whatever, this is the way I go. And so that's often how we are. We get used to a pattern of behavior, a way of interacting with other people, and we just say, well, that's who I am. The truth is that's how you've learned to be. And you can change the way you respond. And this is the idea of neuroplasticity. And they've seen this with scans of the brain, being able to change the way your brain functions and create a new pattern of behaving and interacting with yourself and interacting with others. So, what do we do about this cow path? Because we all have our own cow path, right? That familiar way of responding to other people that may be less than kind, right? We all get to that point sometimes. And so, I'm not sure how many of you have heard of the famous psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust. But what he said is our freedom lies between the space between the stimulus and the response. So, someone says something that you don't like, you immediately respond back with an attack. You've kind of stepped into that sense of trance and stress. But if you can stop and pause and be present in that moment and think about how you really want to respond, or maybe you need to walk away because you know that at that point you are not going to have a good response. And that you need to think about an appropriate one. So then you can come back later and express how you're thinking, how you're feeling in a way that is closer to being friendly. Okay, so you guys are all aquatic directors, right? And you, not everyone? Not everyone. I was under the impression that most of you were.
All of the phrases.
Well, now you all can see what comes from assuming, right? Assuming that you know the correct answer, maybe. But you all are in a position of leadership, and even if you weren't in a specific place of leadership, you can be a leader, no matter where you are and how you interact with other people. So it may be challenging sometimes for you all to talk with people that you supervise or even patrons that you're working with to get them to abide to the rules, because the people who work for the Y have to abide by the rules, and the people who come to the Y have to abide by the rules. Well, they don't have to, but then there's maybe consequences to that. And so how do we deal with those moments where somebody else thinks that their way of doing things is the appropriate way and you don't, but there's a rule here to follow? And so this can often be a challenge in addressing other people over maybe not doing their job. So chances are, if you're in charge of somebody and you had to tell them a specific thing to do, and they did it, then there's no problem, right? Hey, you need to go tell Susie that she can't be more than arm's length away from her 4-year-old at the pool. Okay, you know to do that now. They do it, you don't have any problems, right? They take care of it unless the parent has a problem. And then maybe you need to get involved. So say you have to go to one of the junior guards or a new guard who's there who witnesses something that happens that they should really address, but they're not addressing it. So I have a few suggestions, because this is one of the things that was brought up that Jenny and I communicated back and forth on email about. And so I have a few ideas about that, because I've had an opportunity to kind of think about it. And I'm constantly dealing with people who don't want to follow the rules. I mean, that's kind of the nature of my job. So you could come to them first and just simply ask in a very unassuming manner. It's genuine. Genuineness counts. Because if you come in there with an assuming attitude, or you have an air of arrogance about you, people will pick up on that immediately. And they will start to distance from you immediately. The communication breaks down. So see how genuine you can be about being unassuming and investigating with them. I noticed that you didn't say anything to the lady over there with her child. What stopped you from saying something? Not, why didn't you say something? Because if you ask them, why didn't you say something to them, what are they going to say? I don't know. I don't know. What stopped you? Oh, that changes the dynamic of the question. Pay attention to that. When you ask somebody a question, if you ask them why, it's much, much easier to say, I don't know. Ask kids why questions. They'll tell you, I don't know, all day long. You start asking them what and how questions, and they start answering your question more thoroughly. Not always. It doesn't always work, but I find it to be much more effective than asking a question. So say they still don't know, or they're not really telling you what's going on. So then I would say, what have you tried in the past that's been successful at addressing this issue? So that you're relying on maybe what they have done in the past that worked. So you're seeing what they know. Let's just assume they still don't know. So then what I would suggest is that if you can get any information, even from their body language, whether they're looking down or they seem, anxious or they're fidgeting, you can even say something about that. And you appear to be a little uncomfortable with confronting people about the rules. Is that right? You're not assuming that you know that. You just clarify by asking someone, is that correct? Well, they're either going to say, well, yes, it is correct, or like, no. Okay, so that leads to the next stage of, if they are telling you something at that point that is a problem, then you can offer to role play with them, okay? And I would suggest if you're in the position of leadership, you play the role play partner of the mom, the person who would not do what was asked, so that they have an opportunity to see you handle the situation because of your experience in dealing with it. And then offer help. I'll come with you. I'll watch you. I'll be standing there. So that this is more of, we're in this together. That's what leadership is bringing people up with their strengths that they already have. And when you deal with people in this manner, then they're much more likely to say, oh, okay, not always, but you're going to be more effective in coaching and leading other people in that way. And that goes back to what I talked about earlier with emotional intelligence. You're doing your best to perceive what's going on with them emotionally and being aware of your own emotional responses. So it may make sense for you to even experience or to share your own feeling experience. I'm feeling a little frustrated with this. I don't know how to help you. Right? Especially if they're not accepting any of your great ideas. So get real with people in that sense. I'm feeling a little lost here. I don't know what to do. And then after you've done your due diligence at doing that over and over and over again and doing your best to be friendly and kind, then you have to follow your HR policies. Then you have to go, and that's what I have to do with kids that I work with. Okay, we've tried all these different things. You know different skills to do. You know everything that you're supposed to do, yet you still don't do it. So we don't know why the person is doing this. Could be, their upbringing, their training, their, emotional capacity to deal with stress. Who knows what? It helps to believe that they're doing the best they can, whether you believe that or not. Helps when you're parenting. Helps when you're dealing with other people that at that moment they are truly doing the very best that they know how to do. If you can take that kind of attitude towards other people, it's a lot easier to be kind to them. That maybe you can actually see the person behind the anger.